It's been a little over 6 months. I remember. It was Saturday morning-ish, about noon. The clouds were slightly orange and it had rained a little earlier that morning. I was recovering from all the tongbo that I had drank the night before in Tamil. It was the perfect day to have a hangover. I was watching Motu and Patnu on TV and feeding my 6-month-old cousin. When, bang! I heard this noise and I figured it was just my aunt knocking something over in her room. But then seconds later, the earth started to shake. And it didn't even occur to me that there was going to be an earthquake. I grabbed my cousin and I held her close to my chest with my hand cradling her head just in case I fell. And my ama runs into my room screaming, "Wichaluayo! Wichaluayo! There's going to be an earthquake! There's going to be an earthquake!" I told her, "Hold on to the couch." Pictures start falling off the wall. The furniture is swaying back and forth. And I wonder, am I going to live through this? I had a 6-month-old baby in my arms, and I look at her and I think this isn't fair for her. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't thinking emotionally. I knew that the minute it stopped, we had to get out of the building. I had to survive. My baby cousin had to survive. My grandmother had to survive. I had to survive. For my family. For my friends. The earth stopped shaking. I felt very disoriented, very delusional. I ran down 3 flights of steps. I ran as far away as possible, all the time looking back to make sure that my ama was behind me. We stood at the edge of an empty field, looking at the world around us. I took what felt like my first breath since it started. Is it over? I asked my mom, with my baby cousin in my arms.
त्यो दिन चाहिँ स्याटरडे थियो, म चाहिँ होस्टेलमा थिएँ अनि हामी चाहिँ जहिले नै स्याटरडे बाद थियौँ हाम्रो त्यसैले
नेपाली हिजोआज जाँदाखेरि म काठमाडौँमै क्लिनिकमा काम गर्थेँ।
म चाहिँ हस्टेलमा बसिरहेको थिएँ त्यतिकै फेसबुक चलाएर।
म त यही घरभित्र भूकम्प हुँदा त के थियो अब मेरो यही नाति थियो यहाँ प्रोग्राम सुनेर आएको कोही पनि थिएन होइन।
अनि म त सुतेकै थिएँ नि म सुतेकै थिएँ
म स्कुलमा थिएँ खाना खाइरहेको थिएँ।
नेपाल डायलिसिस सेन्टर बरस्थ निवासी आफ्नो अफिसमा पुगेर चाहिँ डायलिसिस पेसेन्टहरू चाहिँ डायलिसिस भइरहेको थियो।
April 25 was a special day for me as it was my birthday.
Ate breakfast, toast and an omelet, was burnt. Sad. April had pancakes and they had maple syrup. Delish. Need to do an acclimatization hike. Didn't know where to go. No map. We dumb. Ended up chatting with the guide. Decided on Chukong. This was the last entry that I found in my iPhone of my trip to Nepal. Almost 6 months later, I still have not reflected properly on the aftermath of the earthquake. It is one of those experiences that will stay with me forever, compartmentalized in my long-term memory, at least until I grow old or senile. I'd always been keen on traveling to Nepal. and it is home to the Himalayas and some of the tallest mountains in the world. Just the mention of Mount Everest was inescapable throughout childhood. You could not go through life without seeing pictures and learning about it or hearing epic tales of brave men and women climbing to the summit. So when my friend told me she was planning on trekking to Everest Base Camp, I was easily convinced. I had already been interested in traveling to Nepal, and we knew at least 7 people who had trekked to EBC without guides or porters and had survived. If given the opportunity, who would not want to witness the breathtaking majesty of the Himalayas? Therefore, at a Korean barbecue on a cold, wintry night, I decided impulsively to trek to the EBC with my friend. We flew into Kathmandu on April 17th. We stayed in the city for the weekend, and on Monday, we flew to Lukla to begin our 12-day trek. By April 25th, we were in Dingolche at an altitude of 4,530 meters. The day of the earthquake was our acclimatization hike. The next day, we were supposed to continue on to Gorkaship and hopefully Everest Base Camp. That morning began ordinarily enough. I woke up freezing, sought refuge in the dining hall for warmth, apparently ate a burnt omelet, read my book, and waited for my friend to wake up. Not many trekkers were lodging at the Snow Lion Lodge. I remember 3 European men preparing for the day. They looked like real trekkers, like Bear Grylls. And I just laughed quietly to myself, thinking how ridiculous I must have looked wearing my pizza beanie. When my friend finally woke up, we discussed 2 options for our acclimatization hike with advice from a Sherpa. It was either A, trek up the big mountain as if we were going towards Gorkashep, or B, trek to Chukung, which was another village near Dingolche. We decided on the latter, as the path was flat and did not require trekking up another big hill.
Peace Corps Volunteer Group N202. I first arrived in Nepal on March 10, 2015 with 32 other Peace Corps trainees. I'd only met them 5 days before, but there was something special about the group. Maybe it was our delayed arrival, which we spent contently in Hong Kong. But even before we set foot in Nepal, we created a strong bond. Our pre-service training took place in Kavre district, about 2 hours southeast of Kathmandu by bus. Peace Corps volunteers are given 3 months of language, cultural, and technical training before being sent out into the villages in the west of the country. Part of this training was a 2-day trip to Kathmandu to familiarize ourselves with the town where the Peace Corps office was, to learn about navigating the city, and to do some sightseeing. Our group had begged to stay in the capital for an extra day, and with some hesitation, Peace Corps said, okay, and we paid for the extra night at the hotel. We were to leave Kathmandu at 1 p.m. on April 25th and arrive in Kavre around 3 or 4 p.m. 2 other trainees and I decided to just browse the bookstores in Tamil, the touristy downtown area of the city. So we left, we decided to, we left the hotel at approximately 11:45 a.m. and headed out to explore.
We began our trek with high spirits, as we were convinced it was a relatively easy acclimatization hike. And it was true, kind of. The terrain was much flatter than the other trek. It was a wonderland of green, lush, endless open fields. Ama de Blanc was on our right, with boulders randomly scattered about in every direction. And upon seeing them, you immediately think of Ariel from The Little Mermaid, perched on it, belting part of your world. And also, you wonder why you're not reenacting that iconic scene as you hear the rush of a streaming river just around the river bend. It all sounds really picturesque, but the trek was deceivingly difficult. I learned the hard way that I was susceptible to altitude sickness. We were alone for most of the time until we caught up to 2 different groups. 3 Americans, 2 Sherpas, a guide and a porter, and 3 European men from our lodge. The 3 Americans were an expat couple from Scotland and their friend from New York. The couple, B and M, were lovely. M had been diagnosed with breast cancer and was in remission. They had both trekked in Nepal before, but they wanted to go on another holiday to celebrate their years together. The group got separated. B was with their guide, who was an old friend. M was with the porter, and their 3rd friend was even further behind. We chatted with B and the guide, realizing that we had the same destination in mind, the the tea house. From a distance, I spotted the tea house and sighed with tremendous relief, knowing I would be able to sit down and rest. Throughout the journey, I learned how much I appreciated being able to sit. The two men carried on ahead of us. When we climbed over the short rock wall, I saw B setting, and immediately my heart sank. I knew the tea house was closed. B confirmed it. He started laughing as he knew M would be pissed off and start cursing. He was right. So we sat on the bench-like rocks to rehydrate, snack, and rest before possibly continuing on to Chukum. We saw the three Europeans continue in the direction of Chukum, determined to reach their destination quickly. The rest of us took in the scenery and chatted a bit. Finally, M and the reporter arrived, and like we predicted, she started shouting, "Are you fucking kidding me?" She continued ranting for a bit, and I helped take some pictures of them once she calmed down. I sat back down on the rocks next to A, and that's when the initial shaking occurred.
When the earthquake began, the three of us had just stepped out of a shop into a small square with a Buddhist stupa, a dome-shaped shrine.
If you know me, you would know that I have a terrible habit of shaking my legs like a dog itching itself. A asked me, "Are you shaking your legs?" I felt the rock shaking slightly and laughed in disbelief, thinking, how could she possibly think I was actually shaking the rocks?
At first, I didn't understand why my last step felt so unstable, and it wasn't until I was thrown to the ground that I realized what was happening.
Then the shaking got stronger, and all of us stared at each other with eyes wide open, shouting, "Earthquake!"
My friends and I ran to the metal fencing of the stupa and held on, keeping our eyes fixed on the buildings around us.
All six of us immediately grabbed onto each other, huddling on the ground in the middle of an open grassy area, helplessly waiting for it to stop. My friend had tears streaming down her face, a bewildered expression in her eyes. She had never experienced an earthquake before. I had, and was trying to calm her down to tell her that we were going to be okay. It felt like an eternity. We had nothing to do but wait.
After the first bout of shaking stopped, people began flooding into the square and chaos ensued. With every aftershock, screams echoed throughout the city.
The tea house near us collapsed, rocks fell and rolled down, and then we heard a deafening booming clap like thunder, followed by the roaring movement of snow. It was an avalanche in Avadabam next to us. Finally, it stopped. We all looked at each other in shock. It took us a moment for us to collect ourselves before questions just came rushing out of our mouths.
We knew we could not go anywhere because we had no idea where to go, how to get to another open space, and what exactly to do if we got there.
There were so many thoughts going through my head, like, holy shit, did that just happen? Thank goodness we're okay. Could you imagine if we were sitting and having tea inside the tea house?
After 2 hours of standing in the square and trying our best to help with what we could, we were told by our security staff to go back to the hotel.
Now what?
Walking through the city, we saw the destruction. Although the earthquake was less destructive than predicted, bricks, collapsed buildings, and injured people filled the streets. We were allowed to sit on the lawn of the National Election Committee's offices next to our hotel. My group was the last one to reach the lawn. Relief came over the other trainees who thought we were hurt or worse. Although we were trying to do our best to stay positive, there was a palpable sense of uncertainty and gloom.
B&M's guide really took care of us. He seemed calm, but his eyes betrayed him. I could see the fear as he tried to get in contact with his family in Kathmandu. I honestly thought everything was okay, or at least I wanted to believe that it was.
Aftershocks came approximately every 30 minutes, prologued by a chorus of birds taking flight from the trees to escape the shaking.
April 25th was just a normal day. I was relaxing on the sofa, surrounded by my family, when suddenly I heard a groaning sound. I was still working out what was happening when my family started to run. Despite being young, I was the last one to respond. And by the time we tried to leave the building, it was too late. The mild pushes that transformed into vigorous shakings and helplessness compelled us to seize our movements. All of us grasped at each other, because that was the only thing we were capable of doing at that moment. It was all very new for me. The youth inside me begged me to react, but I just stood, an immobile lump of flesh and bones. My eyes, which had never sworn to shed a tear, were now flooded and blurred. Time came to a halt, and that moment never seemed to end. But the phenomenon finally ended. After scaring me half to death, it carved a deep scar of cowardice in my heart. The first quake melted my pride. It made me realize how small and powerless we were against fate. Now when I look back in time, What do you call that incident? It was more than just a bad experience. It was a teaching of a lifetime.
At that point, we decided to head back to Shea and see if anyone had any information. Once we returned to the town, I realized how naive I was. I remember walking down the path from the lodge that was usually empty in the morning now contained a horde of people strolling furiously through their smartphones. Perhaps since I was such in a state of denial, I did not think much of it. We ran into several other trekkers we met along the way who informed us that the earthquake had been a magnitude of 7.8, one of the biggest earthquakes in 80 years. The death toll was already rising. Bear in mind, we were in a very remote area, so any information we heard was either from Sherpas who had gone to different towns to get updates, or from trekkers who could get an internet connection to read the news. There was a lot of conflicting news floating around. A and I just wanted to know for ourselves, directly from the news. We grabbed our phones and joined the horde. That was the only lodge with a working internet connection. We heard people saying that the owners were taking advantage of the crisis and overcharging for only 30 minutes. And even then, the connection was slow. We decided to come back later in the evening. We headed back to our lodge and got a chance to survey the damage around the town. Fortunately, there wasn't any major damage. Several rock walls had collapsed here and there. The most visible damage was at one lodge where some rocks had fallen into a room and onto a bed. It was really fortunate that no one had been in the room at the time. Then came the aftershocks, a lot of them. They felt pretty strong too, so you could only imagine the magnitude of the ones in the cities. Each time they happened, everyone immediately bolted out of the lodges to avoid getting hit by anything falling down. When it was evening, we made our way back to the lodge to use the internet. It was a race against time. You do not realize how quickly 30 minutes passes when you are trying to load multiple news articles on a slow internet connection. Most importantly, we were able to send I'm alive messages to our families and send a quick status update on Facebook to our friends so they would not freak out when they watched the morning news. The night before I left for Nepal, I had told them I was going, but not that I was trekking there. Funnily enough, my parents had actually forgotten that I was in Nepal, and I almost got away from telling them until my sister contacted them to say I was safe.
It was a sunny, gorgeous day as we walked out of Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu. A week following the second major earthquake in Nepal, my wife and I had gathered medical supplies and headed to Nepal for the relief effort and to visit some of my families. We were greeted by family members who, to our surprise, looked normal and very happy to see us. As we were in the car driving towards where we would stay, everything seemed ordinary. It didn't seem like there was much damage. The usual, dirt, pollution, traffic, and the pedestrians were abundant. However, as I kept on looking, I started to notice blue tents everywhere and the odd postures of some buildings. It was as if they had stopped in the middle of falling.
After spending 3 hours on the lawn of the National Election Committee's offices next to our hotel, all the trainees were moved to the U.S. Embassy. Being the most seismically stable structure in the entire city, it became our home for the next 4 days. We slept on the ground in a cubicle, ate whatever food we could find in the embassy storerooms, and would have daily meetings with our staff to see what the next step for us would be.
Next, we stopped the car and got out to see some of the harder hit buildings and areas more closely. Now, this was when the damage and the effect of the quakes really hit me, and I was not prepared. We walked through narrow passageways hidden between buildings and emerged to see piles of rubble mixed with household belongings.
During the first night, 2 large aftershocks occurred in the middle of the night. The first one woke me up, and I lay there awake the whole night thinking about how fortunate I was to be in that building, and how much worse it must have been for those not allowed in the compound.
The local residents were talking, and someone mentioned that there were still bodies buried underneath the rubble. The cause of the putrid stench coming from the area. This made me think about my family and left a really heavy feeling in my heart knowing that they too could have ended up like this. We headed back to the car and resumed our trip. But my mind kept thinking about what I had just seen. What the residents of those buildings must have gone through during the quake and about how they were adjusting now.
The Nepali government issued a statement that requested people to stay out of homes and buildings for the first 72 hours after the earthquake, meaning everyone was sleeping in makeshift tents in whatever open space could be found. To make matters worse, it also began to rain that night too.
Suddenly, it got dark outside and we could hear the whooshing of the wind outside the car. Dark clouds had gathered, completely blocking out the sky. It started to rain hard and the wind blew out of nowhere. We had to wait on the side as the storm approached. And as we waited, I looked outside, and in the distance, I noticed rows of blue tents, some being violently shaken by the wind. As I watched and waited for the storm to pass, I started to think about the poverty in this country and how so many people were without proper shelter before the massive earthquake. Now, many more were left without homes and basic needs. The storm passed as quickly as it had come, and we started on our way home.
Eventually, we were moved to another hotel deemed safe, where more bad news was revealed. Peace Corps headquarters had decided to evacuate the trainees, and later all volunteers, from the country until the situation had calmed down. We were bused back to our host families in Cabre to gather our things and say our abrupt, tearful goodbyes for the last time. A few weeks later, we were all flown back to our homes, where we waited.
As we approached the place of our stay, I noticed a large gash on the walkway leading to the house. There were several other cracks in the building, which made me uneasy about going inside. My brother-in-law informed me that almost every building in the city has some kind of crack or damage. There must have been very few buildings left unscathed.
3 weeks after, Peace Corps Nepal set a date for us to come back, and 4 weeks after that, most volunteers and trainees returned.
That night, I went to bed thinking about the possibility of the house falling down while I was asleep. Now, this turned out to be a very common thought, and a more extreme worry for some than others. As I learned, many people would take turns staying up at night, ready to alert and wake everyone in the possibility of another quake.
Hotter than I expected. I've never been to Nepal before, and my imagination is filled with photos of Sangraula and its wildlife. But down here in Bisi, the summer sun is unrelenting. We've been waiting on a hard-packed, dirt-turned helicopter landing zone for a day and a half to be delivered to the furthest reaches of the country. The Nepali Minister of Defense and President, along with a horde of Nepali and international press, landed helicopters from the landing zone. I suggest moving our supplies to the field where the big Indian military helicopter is. I want to be sure the cameras capture our piles of medical supplies sitting on the dirt for the time. I'm more than blindly annoyed, as the well-meaning but untrained volunteers throw whatever equipment they can onto the helicopter with no regard for weight distribution or allocation of critical food or water supplies. When I finally get on board, I try to get comfortable amid the boxes of antibiotics and bags of rice for the 25-minute ride up the valley. As we pass the villages leading to our final destination, we never quite land, merely hovering a few stories above the ground, passing bags of rice to the creatures, who unceremoniously dumps them out the door. For a brief moment, the sounds of the helicopter reverberate through the mountains, before gradually fading down the valley. Our colleagues who landed in the first lift are here, and they're not alone. Hundreds of onlookers have rushed to the landing zone to see what new curiosity the helicopters have deposited on their doorstep. This is my first introduction to the Danya people. The kids, some who look younger than 8, fight with each other about running our bags up to those clinic sites. Those of us who have newly arrived breathe heavily, trying to adjust to a sudden increase in altitude. I'm glad to not have to carry the heavy bags of ice fluids, but somewhat embarrassed. As it flies up the mountainside, lifted by an elementary school age kid. Our trek is halted briefly as two water buffalo hide in front of us on the trailing road, until one of the older Tamil teens drives the buffalo up by pelting them repeatedly with large rocks. We make it up to the side, and I conduct a quick survey alongside our wilderness survival expert to ascertain the safety of the location. This should work.
A few days ago, we went to Singla as part of an international medical tour team.
This included providers from Massachusetts General Hospital and Scripps in San Diego, as well as student volunteers from Nepal's public health and pharmacy schools.
Singla village in Gorkha district is a small hamlet perched on the top of western Nepal's high hills. Around 1,000 people are trapped in this beautiful village, which has been sending young men to trucking industries and to Middle Eastern construction companies. Just like in the other villages we visited, all you see are elderly people, young wives, small kids, and only a handful of young men.
The first quake wiped out nearly all the houses in the villages, and the aftershocks crushed every old structure that remained standing. Before starting medical services, we took a quick tour of the village. All we saw was rubble. The streets were now filled with debris, and a stench of decaying animal and human waste hung in the air. A couple was trying to get into their house through a destroyed roof. The wife got into the attic by moving tin sheets and retrieved a blanket. It was covered with dust, and part of it looked burned. She cut the burnt part off with a sickle and saved the blanket. It is cold in the mountains.
The school grounds had turned into a makeshift medical camp, filled with patients waiting to be seen. But as we set up a registration area, we saw the locals engaged in an animated discussion. I asked what was going on. What I heard humbled me as a relief worker and made me proud of being Nepali. Nepal is known for its respect and love for the hundreds of thousands of guests that come to visit the country. I saw this tradition alive and well in Singla. The villagers were having discussions about who would hand over the rice and food materials they had saved to feed our 15-person medical team. Singla hadn't had a single food drop since the earthquake, and people were skipping their meals every other day to ration their food. Despite this, the villagers still offered us their meals. We vehemently protested, informing them that we had brought our own food. They then insisted on doing the cooking for us. We made a compromise, finally, that our team would cook, but we would use their pots, pans, and utensils. The destruction faced by the people in Singla was overwhelming, but it was very well matched by the generosity.
A few days later, we went to a nearby Nuwakut district outside of Kathmandu to set up a free health camp. Many people who came had conditions prior to the earthquake, but they never got them checked out. Many were too poor or lived too far away from local clinics or hospitals. This made me think about the bigger problems of Nepal: the scarcity of proper health care, the prevalence of poverty, the lack of stable government and institutions. These had been issues plaguing Nepal long before the earthquake.
An elderly woman in her 80s was brought to the clinic after being carried in on a straw mat. She and her husband had hiked a couple of hours to the clinic after hearing that a medical team was providing care. She was barely able to sit up, and her husband, also in his 80s, wanted us to fix her. She had been buried in the debris for 2 days and was rescued by her husband after he had crawled out of the debris himself. She was writhing and screaming in pain, and we didn't have any painkillers stronger than paracetamol or ibuprofen. Her lungs were filled with fluid. Her heart was failing. At Mass General, a rapid response team would have been activated to save her life. Here in Singla, she was lying on the floor on a straw mat, struggling to take the pills she would take for an annoying headache. She became slightly more comfortable, and I decided to give her a medication I had brought with me in case I had altitude sickness. It increases urine output and can reduce fluid in the lungs. Did I adhere to the international guidelines on heart failure management? Did I even know what I was doing? All I wanted for her was to breathe a little bit better so I could talk to her about the next steps.
Using an interpreter, I tried to explain the poor prognosis to the woman, given the lack of advanced and appropriate medical care. I was telling a woman who had survived so much that accepting death was her only option. After a long conversation, she said that she wanted to die peacefully at home, or whatever remained of it. However, her husband wanted to move to another village, hoping there would be food and shelter there. He didn't know whether to stay with her, to watch her die, or to find and try to find food and shelter for himself.
In these remote and treacherous mountains, the couple had spent 8 decades living against all the odds, but the quake had pushed them to the brink. Now they had to decide whether to rebuild the house, care for the sickly woman, or just wait for a monsoon's final blow while living under a tarp.
A few hours later, the concoction of medications improved her breathing. The woman finally stood up with her husband's help. They walked back through the mountains to their home in order to clear the rubble and spend the remaining days before the woman's death in what was left of their home. A personalized care plan, which maximized comfort, would have been set up for the woman in Boston. In Singla, she'll be moving rocks as her heart eventually stops from exhaustion.
Another 80-year-old woman came to our medical clinic with complaints of poor vision and a cough. She had dense cataracts in both of her eyes, and I told her that she would need them surgically removed, a relatively simple procedure done in my hands. After I asked her to remove some of her clothing to listen to her chest, a collection of various articles tied by an old thread fell out. She was visibly embarrassed, but opened up after I inquired about them. I requested her permission to take a picture and share her story, to which she agreed. The list of items were a 4-inch toothbrush, her only toothbrush for more than 20 years. She had around 5 intact teeth, all had cavities. An earwax remover for her to hear better. A pair of tweezers she used to pull her chin hairs. She hated the chin hairs. 2 pairs of keys, old keys to her house that was destroyed, and a new set of keys to take to a box that held her most important possessions, as she now lived under a tarp. She didn't disclose what the box held. I asked her what she would do if she got her vision back. She replied that she would remove any remaining chin hairs. Before I could speak, an onlooker blurted out,
"Grandma, you don't have any remaining chin hairs."
She smiled and said that she just wanted her cough treated. I gave her medicine, and she went away beaming.
As I spent more time talking with people and family members, I started to notice a certain pattern. Most were afraid. Fear loomed in their minds. Many of my relatives were still sleeping in tents because they were afraid to go back to their houses. Various rumors fed their fears. Rumors of the end of the world and the coming of another massive earthquake kept everyone on edge. One of my friends told me, "You came at a bad time. You should have stayed where you were safe." When asked why, he told me there was a Lama, a Buddhist monk, who had predicted that there would be an even bigger earthquake coming soon. The Lama had been beaten after the first quake because he said another quake would come. But after the second big quake, people realized their mistake and apologized to him. Now the Lama predicted the coming of the third, even more massive quake. Another interesting rumor people spoke of was of the talking cow. Apparently, there were some people that mistreated the cow, and the cow suddenly started to speak. "Why are you giving me a hard time? Nepal is coming to an end soon. You will all suffer." My grandma told me this. And she had taken it quite seriously, too. She was worried about what would happen to the country and to everyone. There were many other rumors, but the main fear was of constant aftershocks, day after day. The quakes were smaller, but big enough to rattle everyone, physically and psychologically. Now, I recall one quake that instilled fear in me as well. One morning, I was sitting talking with family members inside, and suddenly everything started shaking back and forth. It stopped for a few seconds, and then everything started to shake again. My aunt ran outside. The children held onto the tables. I was sitting down and could not get up. I was motionless and thoughtless. My stomach sank, and I could feel my heart beating fast. I did not know what to do. I was paralyzed with fear. And once everything stopped shaking, I was able to move again, and everyone went downstairs to the ground level. After this event, I noticed something had changed. I started to notice the smaller earthquakes. At least I thought I did. At times it felt as if everything was moving, and I would ask people around me, did you feel that? Even every little shake induced similar feelings in me, and I started to sympathize with the people and their fears. I couldn't even imagine what my mental state would be like had I been here during the 7.8 magnitude earthquake. I finally began to grasp why everyone seemed on edge.
After the second major earthquake, we went to Korla, a village in Oyo region in northern Gorkha. We had a 2-day stay in Korla. We saw nearly 250 patients on the first day, and everyone was exhausted. The villagers argued among themselves about who would feed us that night, and we settled with one family. After a great sumptuous meal, we went off to sleep in our tents. One would expect waking up to a quiet morning peppered with the sounds of chirping birds, as spring had just arrived in this remote corner of Nepal. But instead, we woke up to the sound of construction. As I got out of my tent to survey the commotion, I noticed a group of men working in a nearby house. I sat on a hillside to observe their work and asked if I could take pictures and write about them. They agreed. The man in the blue t-shirt on the top left is Mr. Bel Bahadur Gale, who thinks he's around 48 years old. He's not sure and would have to check his citizenship card, which is somewhere in the rubble. The person next to him is his cousin. The young person with a loose-fitting cap is Mr. Gale's son. He didn't smile and didn't give me his name. Mr. Gale said that he was around 17 years old. The guy in the red coat didn't talk much either. He didn't give me his name, but said he was helping his fellow villagers dig out their destroyed houses so they could recycle the construction materials.
Mr. Gale and his family now live in an adjoining tent donated by an aid agency in the early days after the first quake. Not much relief has arrived in the village since then. The trails have been washed out and the landslides have cut off access to the outside world. Nearby a cell phone tower, which was going to offer 3G internet service, has now been rendered useless by the quake. The future was almost here.
Mr. Kellen had recently asked his son, who had not smiled at all 10 minutes into our conversation, to return to the village from Kathmandu, where he had been attending a private English school. Now, his son was helping him demolish and rebuild their home while entirely mute and withdrawn. Mr. Kale lost most of his grain storages as they were in the attic of the house. He hoped to salvage any remaining corn and wheat stock from the rubble. Mr. Kale is a farmer, but now his terrace farm has cracks and he's unsure what he will do during the planting season, which is only a few weeks away. He also had a few goats, all of which died in a landslide triggered by the quake, and he doesn't expect to be able to invest in livestock again.
Mr. Gale was around 18 years old when he and his father had decided to build their home. He looked very happy and proud, explaining to me how they, along with other villagers and family members, built the house that he was now demolishing. He was happy that he had been able to help his father, a master weaver and builder. Mr. Gale found 2 articles in the debris: joko, a basket, and school, a multi-purpose mat. His father had woven them decades ago. There was visible damage to both items, but he opted to keep them to remember his father. He lamented that weaving skills had now been lost as youth moved to the Middle East or Malaysia for work.
Mr. Kale told me he wasn't worried about destroying the house that he and his father built decades ago. He's happy that his son is here. His son is almost the same age he was when he helped his own father build the house. Next year, after the monsoon, his 18-year-old son will help him rebuild the house just like he did 30 years before. He can't be sure how long it's been, though. He still hasn't found his ID card.
The Tamil have been hit hard by the earthquake, among the most geographically, socially, and economically isolated members of Nepal society. Most Tamil have to walk an hour or more across some of the planet's most difficult terrain to get to the nearest health facility. I hope that we can help. I hope that our presence won't undermine the development of the local health infrastructure. I hope our helicopter ride didn't delay yet another village receiving food rations or shelter. I hope we can do more good than harm in this unfamiliar place that we barely understand. In each village we pass through, we have to work hard to manage expectations. We didn't bring an optometrist from Let's neighborhoods. We don't have the ability to do surgery except under the direst of circumstances. For such things, villagers will have to make the long and dangerous trek down the valley and take the bus to Padang Basic, and that's if the roads are repaired by now. They will have to risk injury and a lonely death along the treacherous trails just to get basic medical care. Some of them are angry at us. I am angry at us. I wish we could do more. I wish they didn't have to choose between austere, rural self-sufficiency and urban poverty. But there isn't time for reflection. The line is starting to back up, and there isn't many hours of sunlight left. Next patient.
खेतपाती भुइँचालो जाँदाखेरि मल छरिरहेको थियो अनि एक्कासी भुइँचालो आयो डर लाग्यो अनि भुइँचालो आगो भन्यो अनि सडकतिरै बस्यो अनि त्यतिमै उभियो अनि गाउँघरमा कराउन थाल्यो घर पनि भत्क्यो अनि हेऱ्यो अनि त्यति अनि खेततिरै बस्यो अनि जाडोमा बस्दा बस्दा अनि बनायो कटेरो बनायो अनि बस्यो
अनि अहिले पनि डर लाग्छ
अलिअलि
अलिअलि फेरि आउँछ जस्तो लाग्छ
आउँदै जाँदै गर्छ
अब म त अब भूकम्प आएपछि हामी उठ्नु हुँदैन चल्नु हुँदैन बस्नु भने मैले भनिदिएको थियो उनीहरू भागेछ म त भित्र थुनिहालेँ अनि म 4 दिनमा बल्ल म भिडियोग्राफरले बोकेर ल्याएको रहेछ 4 दिनमा बल्ल मैले होस आयो अहिले ठिकै छ मेरो त सबै अब ठिकै भन्नु पर्यो अब नमरे बाजे र अब ठिकै हुनु पर्यो अब बिग्रेको त बिग्रिसक्यो के गर्नु हिँड्न बाटो छैन बस्न घर छैन त्यस्तो अब पालाहरू ओढेर बसिरहेछ अर्को जग्गातिर अहिले अर्काले अहिले जाऊ भने जानु पर्यो कहाँ बस्न जाने त्यस्तो भएर छ
We didn't have any time to think at all. We had to work immediately and use our common sense. Our team had heard a baby crying and the house was half damaged. And so we were just digging up and throwing all the rubbles to just take out the babies, and there was a suddenly aftershock and all the house came back and we couldn't save the baby, but we could save our life, and that was one of the most kind of very sad story to us, to all the rescue team, that demotivated us to carry out the rescue work. I sometimes have a nightmare about that baby, and we still get terrified. And whenever we meet with I meet with my friends, the first topic that we talk about would still be that baby, and we regret very much that if we were kind of minutes earlier, we could have saved the life of a baby. But I console myself saying that one died, but we saved 100 other people's.
त्यसपछि हामी सबै वरपर छिमेकीहरू सबै भागेर हामी चौरमा नजिक एउटा स्कुल थियो त्यहाँ खाली चौर थियो हामी त्यहीँ बस्यौँ ल 4 दिन हामी दिन राति टेन्ट जस्तो गाडेर हाम्रो होल त्यो घर त्यहाँ 10-12वटा घर जति छ त्यसको लगभग 50-60 जना हामी सबैजना त्यो पालभित्रै 4 दिन बस्यौँ पानी पर्दा पनि इभन त्यो भित्रै बसेका थियौँ र त्यसपछि चाहिँ हामीलाई धेरै नै गाह्रो भयो किनभने एउटा मानसिक रूपमा त्यो भुइँचालो अब कहिले जान्छ भन्ने नै कुरो भएन पटक आएकोले गर्दा त्यो कारणले गर्दा साँच्चै भन्यो भने त्यसले गर्दा मेरो बच्चाहरूको पढाइ अझैसम्म पनि एकदमै बिग्रेको छ यसबाट उनीहरू पढ्नलाई त्यति मन पराउँदैन कहिलेकाहीँ बेडे हल्यो भने पनि भुइँचालो आयो भन्ने किसिमको मानसिकता त्यस्तो छ स्कुलहरूमा पनि एकदम यो भुइँचालो आयो यसो गर्ने उसो गर्ने भनेर पढाइलाई भन्दा त्यस्तो चिजमा बढी केन्द्रित छ र त्यसले मात्र होइन हाम्रो आर्थिक अवस्थामा पनि नराम्रो असर गर्यो जुन पहिलाको काम व्यापारहरू अलिअलि जे भन्ने जस्तो थियो अब चाहिँ कसैलाई पनि यो व्यापार गर्न पनि इन्ट्रेस्टै छैन कि पहिलो कुरो ज्यान कसरी गर्दा भन्ने हामी बाँच्यो हामी भागे माने थियो किनभने यो भुइँचालोले गर्दा धेरै मान्छे मरे मेरो एउटा छिमेकीको बहिनी पनि मर्नु हो जसको लागि त्यति बेला साँच्चै भन्यो भने पशुपतिमा लास चढाउने ठाउँ थिएन नभएपछि हामी 5 जना छिमेकी मिलेर दाउरा सबैजना हामीले दिन चाहिँ पशुपति विकास कसले चाहिँ फ्रीमा दियो होला तर हामीले चाहिँ 5 जना छिमेकीले आफै बोकेर लगेर त्यसलाई सबै मिलाउने भन्ने सबै कुरा हामीले आफै गर्यौँ यो घटना चाहिँ बहुतै नराम्रो हो हाम्रो सायद लाइफमा हामी कहिले पनि यो घटना बिर्सिन सक्दैनौँ
म त यही घर भित्र अनि केले हाल्थ्यो भने यो समाधि ल्याएको त झन् म आफै ढल्न लागेँ अनि गएर भने त्यहाँ सोधेको त ओहो यो फुटेपछि पनि निसेर गएको यो फुटेर अनि सरहरूले तलबाट आऊ आऊ भनेर बोलायो कहाँ जान्छ रिङ्गट लाग्यो 1-2 महिनासम्म सुतेर हो कि के हो अनि यो पिम त यसरी आएको यसरी आएको मेरो आमाले देख्यो नि र बल्ल घर जान्छ भनेर गो उठेर गएको 3 हप्तासम्म मिनी वाटरको फ्याक्ट्रीमा छाप्रो हालेर बसेको 3 हप्तासम्म बाहिर चुलो बनाएर भात पकाएर खाऊ ढुङ्गाको चुलो बनाएर अनि आएपछि फेरि त्यो ठुलो पैसा लगायो नि मङ्गलबारको दिनमा हो त्यहाँदेखि फेरि तल प्राविधिकको आउन बस्नुभयो लास्टमा पाएको चिज पनि निकालेर खान नसक्ने भयो यसरी खामेर काटेमा खायो भने निल्नु सक्दैन टाढ लगेर अनि अब त्यो यस्तो ओह्रालोमा हेरेर त्यहाँतिर पहिरो आएको बेलामा त सबै रुएर बस्छ नि अब के गर्ने सबै चिर्यो त्यहाँतिर अहिले त लाग्दैन 3 महिनासम्म चाहिँ रिङ्गर लाग्यो अनि यो सामान यो ठाउँमा लाग्यो भने थाहा छैन पातो अहिले भनेको कुरा पनि अहिले नै बिर्सिन्छ केही थाहा नहुने अनि अहिले अलिअलि होस् जस्तै भयो नि अब त मर्दैन जस्तै लाग्छ
माथि भुइँचालो आयो अरे माथिहरू सबै सबै यसो हेर्दा हामी सबै लागेको गऱ्यो यो इतिहासहरू हो यो मल पुग्ने घाँस काट्ने मेला नआए खाना पकाउनु त्यही त बुढोको कामसँग छैन अहिले त
बुढोले फेरि अर्को ल्याएर कान्छी ल्याइरहेछ त्यो पो बर्बाद पर्यो
3टा छोराछोरी पाल्नु नि पऱ्यो मलाई त्यो बेलामा पनि अब यतिको मर्छ होला भने यहीँ खोर्थ्यो मैले राति 4 बजी पनि आएर पार्क गयो यो आफ्नो समुदायले माया लाग्ने रहेछ किन थियो मेरो खुसी डरदै त अब मलाई चाहिँ लाग्दैन अरूले लाग्छ एक मान्छे कतिजना मान्छे पौलाइरहेको छ अरू त्यहाँको चल्छु भइरहेको छ त्यही भूकम्प कारण त्यहाँको मान्छे पनि पौलाइरहेको हुन्छ भूकम्पको तरासमा पौलाउँछ अरे यस्तो ठाउँमा जान्छ अरे भनेर एउटा अफिस खोलेछ भन्थे 12वटामा तर चाहिँ यस्तो भयो पहिला चाहिँ त्यत्रो घर बनाएको यस्तो सघा भयो अब मान्छेले भन्छ राजाले सरकारले पैसा दिन्छ अरे भूकम्पमा परेपछि घर बनाउँछ भन्छ कसले सरकारले बनाइदिन्छ यो दुनियाँको घर आफूले बनाउनु पर्छ यस्तो ठाउँ छ
यसले पुर्याएको क्षति यो रिकभर गर्न मेरो विचारमा नर्मली 10 वर्ष लाग्छ त्यसपछि झन् अहिले यो भारतसँग अघोषित नाकाबन्दी भनौँ न नाकाबन्दी छ यसले गर्दा हाम्रो दैनिक जीवन झन् कष्टकर बनायो अहिलेको अवस्थामा अबको 1-2 हप्तामा केही व्यवस्था गरिएन भने अब झन् चिसोले गर्दा झन् मान्छेहरू मर्ने बिरामी पर्ने झन् ठुलो सम्भावना छ
अब नेताहरूसँग होला नि अब यो त नेताहरू जे गर्छ त्यही हो हामीले केही लाग्छ हाम्रो त हामीले बोलेको त जिल्लाले बोलेको जस्तै हो के त अब नेताहरूसँग होला नि खोल्ने नखोल्ने चाहँदा मर्ने नमर्ने र नेतासँग होला नि मरेर राख्ने बाँचेर राख्ने
अब सरकारले अब नयाँ सरकार भन्छ के भन्छ भन्नु सक्ने नयाँ सरकार पनि आफ्नै नभन्नेले कोही पनि छैन
सरले पनि हामीलाई त्यो ड्रिलिङहरू सिकाउनु भएको थियो अड्केकोमा क्लासमा बस्दा त्यो घन्टी लगाएको चाहिँ अड्केको भाग भनेर 1-2 दिनसम्म ट्रेनिङ गराउनु भयो त्यो हामीलाई कसरी कुद्नुपर्छ यो क्लासले यो रोबाट यो क्लासलाई यो वेबाट भनेर अनि त्यसपछि अनि हामीले त्यो प्र्याक्टिस गऱ्यो अनि सरले भन्नुभएको थियो कि अड्केको फिल भयो कि टिचरले नभनिकन ढाँसेर कुदिहाल भने अनि हामीलाई एकचोटि चाहिँ त्यस्तै फिल भएको थियो अनि कराएर कुदेर चाहिँ अनि अहिले चाहिँ कहिले काहीँ फिल हुन्छ अनि हामीले चाहिँ अर्थक्वेक आएको साइन थाहा पाउनु अब कोही कोहीलाई त अब त्यो प्रायः अब त्यो सायद त्यो साइकोलोजिकल्ली त्यो ऊ भइसक्यो नि त कोही कोहीलाई त फिल भइरहन्छ नि हरेको अनि अब धेरै त्यस्तो भयो भने क्लास पनि डिस्टर्ब हुन्छ अनि त्यो थाहा पाउनको लागि चाहिँ बोतलमा हाफ जति पानी भरेर अगाडि टेबलमा राख्ने अनि अब हल्का सेक भयो कि त्यो पानी सेक हुन्छ नि त अनि त्यही पानी सेक भएको देख्यो कि खुद्ने भयो भने अनि त्यही गरेको पछि क्लासमा अनि अहिले चाहिँ त्यस्तो धेरै छैन
गाडी साडी आउँदा सेक हुँदैन पानी
हुँदैन अनि कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ साथीहरूले त्यतिकै हल्लाइदिन्छ डराइदिनको लागि त्यही
एउटा यसको पोजिटिभ कुरा के छ भने हाम्रो समाजमा म यो भन्ने छिमेकहरूमा नमिल्ने नगर्ने भावना थियो जतिसुकै धनी हुन् जतिसुकै ठुला मान्छे हुन् सबैलाई त्यो पालोमा सँगै बसेर हामी सँगै बसेर च्याउचाउ र चना चिउरा सँगै बसेर खाए त्यसमा चाहिँ के रहेछ अहिले चाहिँ के शिक्षा एउटा दिएको छ भने हामी सबैले मर्नै पर्ने रहेछ गाह्रो समयमा पर्दा हामी त एकै रहेछौँ जसले जतिसुकै सम्पत्ति कमाओस् जसले जतिसुकै पढोस् हामी सबको अवस्था त त्यही रहेछ
मान्छेले यस्तो उस्तो ठुलो घर यताउति भन्ने भन्छन् नि धनी गरिब सब समान रूपमा देखियो मैजाको पछि घटना मान्छेहरू हेर्न जाँदाखेरि को सानो जाति को ठुलो जाति को धनी को गरिब होइन सबैजनालाई सुत्ने र खाने ठाउँ चाहियो त्यति अरू केही चाहिएन पैजालो आएको 2 दिन 3 दिनसम्म जहाँ सुते नि भयो जोसँग खाए नि भयो जोसँग बसे नि भयो को रमाइलो लाग्यो आनन्द लाग्यो के
The media coverage immediately following the earthquake and for a few months afterwards was massive. You could not watch the news or read articles about Nepal that weren't about the earthquake and the recovery process. Nearly 6 months later, the earthquake feels like an afterthought. It has disappeared almost completely from the news. I still think about Nepal. It is always in the back of my mind. I understand the struggle to rebuild and the road to recovery will not be easy. However, the Nepali people are resilient. I believe they will come out of this stronger than ever.
I struggle to title this piece as I hunker over my laptop in the tight seats of this tiny Yeti Airlines night flight to Kathmandu. I struggle because I've tried over 1,000 times and I still haven't heard from you. I was the first one to feel it. My chair suddenly thumped against the rock wall behind me. 7.8. It felt like a playful rhythmic pulse from where I was sitting, over 300 kilometers away. I was in a familiar place, one enveloped by chronic emergencies of so many unfortunate varieties. Yet it was isolated from the acute emergency that has buried this country in its own history. I fear you were also in a familiar place. And if you were, it's hard to imagine the worst earthquake to hit this country in 80 years spared you. Your choices were slim. You were at home eating beneath 4 floors of the wrong kind of concrete. You were in your village, the first to receive a military helicopter for what could only be ominous reasons. Or you were at work, only 20 meters from where Nepal's most storied temples were razed to rubble, and the landmark that supplied your father's business for 26 years disappeared before your eyes. As we descended into Kathmandu, it was the darkest I've ever seen the city. Only the cold blue of compact fluorescent bulbs acting as backup lit the valley. They were bobbing in the air like lost souls. I awoke last night to tremors. But I've decided they were gentle enough to be nudging me in your direction. This morning, I will do what Ansel and Google haven't enabled me to do. I will find you. And together we will unearth the hope buried beneath history in Kathmandu.
Meredith Lawder. And then our director, Benita de Wit. She's not coming up, but she's really the one that put everything together to draw everything together.
So yeah, really, I mean, this means a lot to us. I mean, this was just in some of our heads a few months ago, and to see this actually come to life, this is pretty surreal to me and to all of us. So thank you so much. I mean, this really wouldn't have been possible without participation from all the actors, all the crew, everybody that worked. You know, you were awesome. Thanks a lot. Yeah, this has been an experience. And if you guys have any questions about the technical details of this, or the process or anything of that nature, we can answer some now, or we'll be hanging out a little later with the crew and the actors, so you can come ask us questions or give comments, give critiques, tell us what we can improve. We have a good future. So yeah, thanks again. We'll open the doors so you don't have to be obliged to stay here the whole time. So feel free to go if you want to stay and hang out. So thanks again. Thanks a lot.